Formed in 1865, the U.S. Secret Service was originally created to find and destroy counterfeit money. It wasn't until the assassination of President William McKinley in 1901 that their role changed to protecting the president. Today, there are over 7,000 members of the Secret Service, and they use the most advanced techniques to do their jobs. So with today's video, I'm going to count down the 15 most incredible facts about the Secret Service. Number 15. Follow the money. When the Secret Service first formed, their original goal was not to protect the president. Many people may not know the Secret Service was originally created as a branch of the U.S. Treasury Department to fight against currency counterfeiting that was sweeping the nation at the end of the Civil War. So the job of the agency was to help stabilize the economy and the financial system by stopping these newfound counterfeiters and chucking them behind bars, because at that time about a third of the money in circulation was fake. It may not be a glamorous job portrayed in movies and televisions, but it was important nevertheless. Cut to today, and of the 7,000 Secret Service members, most of them are investigating crimes in the financial system, both at home and abroad. It's been said that in the last 10 years alone, the Secret Service has made about 50,000 arrests for counterfeiting, cyber, and financial crimes, and seized nearly $2 billion in fake currency. That's a lot of scratch. And as technology evolves, their role becomes even more important as the bad guys, hackers, and crypto kings learn to work their way around the system, holding not just people but companies for ransom. But on top of seizing all that faux money, the agencies claim to have prevented the potential loss of about $53 billion as well. Nowadays, the agency reports to the Department of Homeland Security instead of its old pals at Treasury. But either way, they're not just saving lives, they're saving money. Number 14. Research projects. If you think you can just waltz right into the White House all willy-nilly, then think again. While the White House compound sees roughly 30,000 visitors a day, only a select few are ever allowed inside. There are plenty of tours to enjoy every day, all of which are offered in 11 different languages. But getting into one of these groups is no easy feat, because they can't just let anybody in there. If you want to take a tour of the illustrious White House, it doesn't matter who you are. Get ready to submit your application at least 21 days in advance. Not only does this give security an adequate head count for the day, but it also allows them to go through some extensive background checks for potential visitors. It sounds like one big bureaucratic nightmare though, but it has to be done. I'm talking about places of employment, previous addresses, criminal records, and group affiliations, and the list can probably go on for hours. And it should come as no surprise that much of the White House is off-limits, even during a guided tour accompanied by high-level security guards. There are some rooms of the White House that will just have to remain a secret from the regular folk forever. And while carrying a firearm may be legal in the United States, it's best to leave those locked up at home before you get there. Sometimes the best way to tackle a threat to the American president is to prevent it from happening altogether. Number 13. 10-Minute Medicine. While there are thousands of Secret Service agents working for the U.S. government, only a select few work for the Presidential Protection Division, and those select few are all trained in something called 10-minute medicine. There's a lot that can go wrong for the American head of state, but things can go from bad to worse if there's neither a doctor nor a hospital nearby. This means they can do everything humanly possible to keep the president alive until they can receive specialized medical attention in the event of an emergency. Think about how we never hear about the POTUS being in a remote location. 10-minute medicine is quite literal, meaning that when they travel, they're never more than 10 minutes away from a trauma center, and an agent will be posted at the hospital who knows the operating room staff. But to play it extra safe, the group traveling with the president will have multiple bags of his blood ready for transfusion should the need arise. It may sound a little silly, but this sort of training was given shortly after an assassination attempt was made on Ronald Reagan in 1981. Reagan was shot, and while the plan was to bring him home to the White House, he was suffering from internal bleeding of the lungs. They rerouted Reagan to the hospital, where he underwent life-saving surgery for the next several hours, and chances are that he wouldn't have survived that initial ride home. Number 12. In the line of duty. Thanks to TVs and movies, when many people think about the Secret Service, they imagine someone diving out in front of the president to take a bullet. Now, generally speaking, that's pretty far from the truth. Since its inception, only 4 Secret Service members have ever been injured in the line of duty, but only one, Leslie Caufelt, lost their life. Caufelt was a member of the White House Police, a branch of the Secret Service from 1942 to 1950. In November of 1950, the White House was undergoing renovations to fix some structural issues, with President Harry S. Truman staying at the Blair House, aka the President's guest house, until the work was done. 2 Puerto Rican nationalists and would-be assassins entered the ground, one from the east and the other from the west. They never quite made it to the main building, having engaged in gunfire with the Secret Service agents guarding the perimeter. Coffelt was shot 3 times by one of the gunmen, but not before shooting and killing his attacker. A civilian had seen most of the commotion and came rushing to Coffelt's aid, and while he was rushed to the hospital, he would die from his injuries 4 hours later. The incident is still considered to be the largest and most dramatic shootout in Secret Service history, and the first and only time a member has died in the line of duty. Number 11. The beginning of the end. While Air Force One may be synonymous with the American presidency and the title of a solid Harrison Ford movie, it's just one of many aircraft in the presidential fleet. Yep, there's Air Force Two, which carries the vice president, but then there's a whole other fleet that the Air Force tries to keep out of sight from the public. The United States has been building and equipping a special set of planes since the 1960s, whose sole purpose has been to evacuate the president in the event of a nuclear attack and command the war from wherever they are. And while these aircraft may not be a total secret, they are rarely ever mentioned, and the Air Force has never publicly acknowledged owning them, even though they're just a phone call away on the president's bright red telephone. But plenty of people have sifted through years of information, declassified records, interviews, and historical documents to put together the secret of the secret fleet. And while Air Force One is simply a call sign for any aircraft carrying the president, the typical behemoth Boeing models aren't the only plane in the fleet. There are multiple helicopters and Gulfstreams that former presidents have been known to use, and they'll even send multiples of the same model as decoys. You will never quite know which one the president is in, and then there's the air support that can be called in a matter of minutes, with one of the more well-known instances being directly after the September 11th attacks, when President George W. Bush's Air Force One was quickly flanked by escorting F-16 Fighting Falcons. Number 10. It can be boring. Being in the Secret Service doesn't always mean being in the heart of the action. In fact, action is the last thing anyone wants to be part of. When it comes to crowd control, though, there's a whole lot of just standing around, and one of the Secret Service's favorite pastimes is known as working the rope. It's just really a fancy term for guard duty. Massive crowds of civilians tend to gather around the White House day in and day out, and they especially like to show up in droves to press events. It's in these moments that a potential bad guy could be hiding in plain sight. And while the Secret Service may be trained to put down threats to the boss, they're even better at preventing the threat altogether. When they work the rope, they're constantly scanning the crowd, keeping their head on a swivel and their eyes peeled. The biggest threat in these crowds is a gun, and so the Secret Service is highly trained to spot the many telltale signs of a would-be shooter. They can tell if the subject is right or left-handed based on something as simple as where they wear their jewelry or which hand they use to cover their mouth when they cough. Once they learn the dominant side, they'll see if the body stiffens as they move to help keep the gun concealed, especially if the clothes are on the baggy side. Number 9. Protective intelligence. Stopping an assailant doesn't always mean grabbing their gun, bringing them to the ground, and cuffing them. Sometimes the best offense is a good defense. The Secret Service can spend hours, days, and even weeks assessing potential threats, and doing that means a lot more than sweeping a room for bombs and bugs and yelling "clear" into an earpiece. They take every little threat seriously, and I do mean little. If a Secret Service agent even hears the whisper of a joke implying any potential harm to the president, they will quite literally sift through every aspect of your life down to the most minute details, leaving no stone unturned. This painstaking process is known as protective intelligence, and it can involve tracking down and interviewing friends, neighbors, co-workers, associates, even looking at your internet history, whatever it takes to answer the question, is this person serious? And anyone who finds themselves on the receiving end of protective intelligence, agents can choose one of 3 options for them. Simply leave them with a warning, have them committed for psychiatric evaluation, or slap them with a nice classy felony with up to 3 years in federal prison. All roads with this one seem to lead back to Ronald Reagan, and so this type of protective intelligence proved to be adequate when the Secret Service interviewed a man who had made a repeated threatening call to the president and determined he was both mentally ill and an alcoholic, and due to those circumstances spared him any serious prosecution. Number 8. Hobbies. Accompanied by Secret Service agents 24 hours a day, the president is never alone. That includes doctor visits and even going to the bathroom. But that also means the president's hobbies become the Secret Service's hobbies too. George W. Bush would famously go for runs every morning during his 2 terms and would be flanked by the Secret Service on all sides. He would even have to tell them his route 24 hours in advance so they could scout and clear the area beforehand. But perhaps even wilder was Bill Clinton, who apparently enjoyed horseback riding, and so even a 20-year Secret Service veteran would have to pony up and ride beside him at all times. That means the Secret Service either needed to dig through their catalog of agents to find a confident writer, or they needed to help someone learn fast. It's safe to say that no amount of tactical training could ever prepare you for something like that. It is an incredibly unique fact about the Secret Service that we don't often think about. There are about 7,000 agents working in service at a time, so the odds are that they'll be able to match POTUS with the right person. So if you're ever thinking of joining up, you never know which of your seemingly silly hobbies could land you on the front lines with the American president. Number 7. Poolside service. The job of a Secret Service member doesn't have to be restricted to land. George W. Bush was big on boating, and the Hawaiian-born Barack Obama was said to hang 10 on the occasional surf session. And so that's when their security detail goes from secret agents to lifeguards on duty. The protectors of the president have to be ready for any and every situation, no matter how out of the ordinary it may appear, which is why they're all highly trained in water rescue detail. They need to make sure both the current and former heads of state stay safe in the water, which is why they train in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina in special aquatic maneuvers for extraction. And out of the 3,200 people that make up the Special Agents Division, it's said that less than 100 of them make the cut to go for a dip. Much of this training is still shrouded in aquatic secrecy, but just don't expect them to hop on a submarine to chase down the bad guys or slug a great white shark in the nose, because chances are they're getting basic lifeguard training. So even though that may not be so exciting, anyone who's ever been a lifeguard, even as a teenager at camp, can tell you it's a tough job with even a tougher training process. Number 6. Going beyond the president. The White House isn't the only venue that the Secret Service is tasked with patrolling and protecting. In 1998, President Bill Clinton established the National Special Security Event Procedure to help federal agencies prevent terrorist attacks at major events like the Super Bowl and even the Academy Awards. Whether you love sports or not, there's no denying that these high-profile events bring thousands of people together on a grand and televised stage, which could be a hot target for attackers. It's not hard for something to go wrong here and for chaos to quickly ensue. So who better to protect the population than all the president's men? And in the aftermath of the September 11th attacks especially, President George W. Bush recognized the importance of such procedures and placed the Secret Service in charge of NSSE security and put the FBI in charge of intelligence and counterterrorism. So just because the president isn't there doesn't mean there isn't work to be done or people to protect. So with that said, if you ever find yourself at a large-scale event like the Super Bowl, World Series, or even the Grammys, you'll never know just where the Secret Service might be hiding out, working the rope, and looking out for any potential threats. Number 5. The Beast. Also known as the first car or its codename Stagecoach, the Beast is the limo belonging to the President of the United States, whoever that may be at the time. This jet black limo was designed and built by Cadillac and allegedly cost around $16 million. A new and improved version of the 2009 model, the Beast is fully armored and hermetically sealed against any possible attack. The exterior walls are 200 millimeters thick, the glass 130 millimeters thick, and 5 inches of thick body panels, which bring the vehicle's curb weight to about 9 tons. The vehicle really does live up to its name because the majority of the car is outfitted with military-grade armor, capable of withstanding the largest bullets in production. And the doors are about 8 inches thick and weigh the equivalent of a cabin door of a Boeing 757 jet. Literally nothing is getting in there without the president's say-so. But the fun doesn't stop there, because the Beast's fuel tank is protected by an explosion prevention foam and can withstand a direct hit from an RPG. And the Kevlar-reinforced tires, they can't be damaged by projectiles or blasts. The limo also has a secure environmental system that keeps everyone inside safe from chemicals and gas attacks and a steady oxygen supply, and carries emergency blood banks filled with the president's type of blood as well. And while this vehicle is equipped for defense, it does have some offensive capabilities, including pump-action shotguns, tear gas launchers, a night vision camera, and even an oil slick. Sweet. Number 4. Food safety. Guns, germs, and steel aren't the only ways to bring down world leaders. It may come off as rudimentary, but poisons are still a legitimate threat used by terrorists and intelligence agencies around the world. But the thing about poison is you usually have to eat, and so what better way to get it into the system than through food? Well, that's what the Secret Service is thinking at least. And so while the president doesn't have a poison tester, the White House chefs have all been carefully vetted, and every bite of food is prepared under the ever-watchful yet sunglass-clad eyes of the Secret Service. No way is arsenic or rat poison getting into the presidential pot roast. But what happens when they're on the move? When the president travels, Navy stewards come along to cook for them and the family. And all of those fun little photo ops where the president is surrounded by good people and better food. Chances are that it's all going to be thrown out because if the Secret Service didn't see it prepared, it could be filled to the brim with the bad stuff. But in a fun turn of events, if the president has a hankering for a pizza or a burger, then the men in black will just have it delivered to another address, because the chances are if the restaurant doesn't know who it's for, it reduces the danger. Number 3. Martial arts. Of course, all members of the United States Secret Service are highly trained in weapons use, having deadly accuracy with firearms like the Remington 870 shotgun, FNP-90 machine gun, and the Heckler & Koch MP5. And various pistols. But what about those moments in closed or crowded quarters? Because guns can't always solve everything. That's why the Secret Service is all trained in hand-to-hand combat, specifically Sistema. Sistema is a brutal yet calculated Russian martial art, which is used by the Spetsnaz and KGB as well. Simply translated to the system in English, Sistema is unlike most other martial arts. It abandons things like katas, gis, and tournaments and adopts an anything-goes mentality. Sistema often involves controlling the attacker's levers, arms, legs, and elbows, giving the user the supreme upper hand as they bend their opponent's appendages in ways nature never intended. Not only that, but the Russian martial art also involves defending against weapons and weapon disarmament. So if someone goes at a Secret Service member with a gun and all they have is their hands, the agent can likely disarm the assailant, quickly bring them to the ground, gain and maintain control, and start breaking bones. No, it's not pretty, and people trained in Sistema are trained to deal with multiple attackers too. But like so many other martial arts, Sistema trains the practitioner to remain calm, cool, and collected under pressure to stay safe and win the fight. For many people, Secret Service included, it can be a way of life. But don't let the chill factor fool you, because while the goal of Sistema is to disarm, it can easily be used to maim and kill. Number 2. Handwriting Analysis. Some people's penmanship may be better than others, but individual handwriting is incredibly unique. But if you're messing around with the President of the United States, then that uniqueness is going to get you busted, especially if you're one of the bad guys. While most of the world has made the switch over to email, the leader of the free world still receives old-fashioned handwritten letters. Sometimes it's fan mail, and sometimes it's hate mail, and writing an anonymous letter to the president seems like a cheeky enough idea. It could be a great way to land yourself in big boy jail. But how could they ever find you? Isn't that the point of being anonymous? Well, unlucky for you, the Secret Service has an array of modern handwriting analysis techniques available to them. They've teamed up with the FBI to create a one-of-a-kind ink library that can provide them with enough data to make your head spin. Included in that library are samples of every ink ever produced in the last 100 years. They have everything from falsified documents to accounting ledgers and autographed baseballs, all of which have been busted open by the library using their 3-stage investigation process. It's as crazy as it is impressive, so should the president get a strange, cryptic, or threatening letter from an anonymous source, the Secret Service can dive right in, even getting in touch with the ink manufacturers to help narrow down their search for the subjects. And rest assured, they won't stop until they find them. Number 1. Cat. Oftentimes, when we think of the Secret Service, we think of stoic men and women in black suits and sunglasses, listening to intel on their earpieces and communicating in secret using devices in their sleeves. And while that stereotype may be true in some cases, the Secret Service's CAT division is a lot less incognito. CAT stands for Counter Assault Team. Any immediate threat to the president's safety is a top priority, and CAT is the first on the scene with a full arsenal of weapons and intelligence whenever necessary. These agents will do everything from deploying a counter-sniper unit to scan an area for hidden threats to engage with threats directly, laying down a barrage of suppressive fire while the rest of the team gets POTUS out of the situation. So while the counter-assault team may not be a private army, it's as close as the president's gonna get. But being assigned to the elite counter-assault team is next to impossible, as only 10% of those who go through the strict application process are even accepted. They're tough, strong, strike fast and firm, and have been trained to use heavy weaponry under the harshest of conditions. The CAT team designated for full-time presidential escort duty is given the call sign Hawkeye, which will be followed by the president's Secret Service code names, with Obama's detail being known as Hawkeye Renegade and Trump's detail known as Hawkeye Mogul. So the next time you witness the American president's motorcade driving down Pennsylvania Avenue, you can rest assured that Hawkeye is in one of the black vans in the region. I'll see you next time. Watch our Obscure playlist for more top 15 videos about the more obscure subjects in our world. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best and most obscure videos.